Good afternoon. My name is Lynn Johnson. I am the Director of the Parks and Recreation Department in Lincoln, and we are here this afternoon to announce that the Nebraska Department of Agriculture has confirmed finding emerald ash borer in Lincoln. They found it in a trap in Lincoln, and they provided a news release earlier today announcing that finding. We have been proactive over the last several years. We've really been planning for emerald ash borer for more than a decade at this point, and we have been proactive in planning for this day when emerald ash borer would be identified. We have been working with community residents, and we've been proactively removing trees over about the last 4 years at this point. We have developed a draft emerald ash borer response and recovery plan that has been reviewed, and it's been recommended by our Community Forestry Advisory Board. And we plan to bring that plan forward for review and adoption by the City Council this fall. That plan identifies that we have just over 14,000 public ash trees before we began removal of ash trees a few years ago. Those are ash trees along streets, in parks, and in golf courses. And our plan is that we will be removing about 1,000 public ash trees each year, and then we plan to replant those ash trees on a one-for-one basis. So the intent is to, over time, we want to make sure that we're not losing our community canopy now that we have emerald ash borer in the community. Last year we removed about 567 public ash trees. This year so far we've removed over over about 700. And we are now budgeted, and we are staffed up, and we are equipped up to where we should be able to remove about 1,000 trees a year moving forward. We've worked out what we think is a cost-efficient approach. Our strategy is to start with the smaller ash trees and work our way up to the larger trees. And the city at this point is intending to remove the smaller ash trees less than about 18 inches in diameter. And that's about 10,000 of the trees. So we've got about probably 8 or 9 years worth of work ahead of us to accomplish that. And then we'll continue to monitor the cost of tree removal. We know that in other areas of the country, after emerald ash borer has been identified, that the cost for tree removal goes up. And so we'll continue to monitor that, but we do plan to work with the private sector in removal of the ash trees. We also plan to work with the private sector in planting of the replacement trees. The plan identifies that during the removal period, we will be treating on an interim basis a portion of the public ash trees, and really the intent is to try to keep those ash trees alive so that we don't end up with standing dead ash trees along streets and in parks. We aren't anticipating doing any treatment during the upcoming 2 years, but after that we'll be evaluating where we're at, and we'll be making a decision about what the plan is for moving forward with treating ash trees at that time. We are currently working with neighborhood groups on a voluntary basis, as well as individuals, for removal of ash trees. We will continue to do that. Laurie Gruber, who is our community outreach forester, is with me this afternoon, and she has been doing that work. And we've actually gotten, I think, great response from the community in working with us in removing ash trees, in removing ash street trees in neighborhoods, and working to replace those trees. The draft emerald ash borer response and recovery plan also includes the suggestion that we establish an adopt an ash tree program. We know that there's residents who probably will like to preserve, and businesses as well, who would like to preserve the ash trees that are near their property. And we would like to work with those residents to do that. We will be establishing a no permit or no cost permit process to do that, so that we can track those trees that have been treated. And we'll also be introducing some code amendments to Lincoln Municipal Code that allow for private chemical treatment of ash trees, and that'll be part of the package that we'll be bringing forward to the City Council later this fall. There's additional information about emerald ash borer and what can be done in terms of response at the Nebraska Forest Service website, and that website address is eabne.info. Again, that's eabne, all one word, .info. We anticipate that there's probably going to be questions from the community about should they begin treating ash trees. We now are within the 15-mile area, and people who have ash trees on their property probably want to go through the process now and evaluate what they want to do with their private ash trees, whether they want to just continue to monitor the condition of those trees and perhaps remove them as they start to decline, whether they want to be proactive as the city is and remove that tree and get new trees planted, or if they want to begin a treatment plan. Like I said, there is information available at the Nebraska Forest Service website about treatment. So at this time, really the impact that this has on the city is relatively minor because we've been planning for this day for a long time. There's actually about $2.3 million of funding in the City Council budget that was just approved on Monday, and so we will continue to do as we had planned in working to remove and replace ash trees on a voluntary basis, working with neighborhoods throughout the community. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Not that it matters, but do you know where the trap was that they found?
The Nebraska Department of Agriculture has asked us just to confirm that it's been identified in Lincoln and not to identify a specific location.
Even the trees that are treated, the treatment won't cure them, it just prolongs their life, but they'll eventually die anyway, right?
They will. That's exactly what happens. The trees need to be treated on either probably a 2-year cycle or a 3-year cycle, and it does prolong their life. But eventually, the tree will kind of live out its life and die and have to be replaced. So. Other questions?
Are you surprised it took this long to find it?
You know, we actually are, because we had anticipated that green bug had been in Lincoln for some time and that we just hadn't found it. And it is a little bit surprising in Nebraska. Other states, it's been common to find them in traps, but it's not been common to find them in traps in Nebraska, that they've typically been actually found in an ash tree that's failing. So it's a little bit surprising that it was actually in a trap in Lincoln and not actually in an ash tree that was declining.
So are you going to target to take down 1,000 trees this year?
We are, and actually Laurie's been working with a number of neighborhoods, and we're probably booked out sometime into 2020 at this point. And we definitely, if neighborhoods or if residents are interested in working with us, we certainly encourage them to contact our office. The number is 402-441-7847, and we're happy to work with them on planning for the removal and replacement of those public ash trees.
For the ones you've been taking down, which ones have you been taking down first?
It's the smaller diameter trees at this point, so or at least a majority of them have been the smaller diameter trees. There is an area, the south of downtown area, that there was a grant secured for removal and replacement of those ash trees, and those are actually pretty large trees, and we're working with a private contractor to take down those larger ash trees in that area south of downtown, and then we'll be replanting. And so that's kind of the strategy that we're working at this point. There is funding in the budget to have city staff remove about 1,000 smaller diameter trees during the upcoming year, and there's also funding in the budget for contractual removal of some larger ash trees. So if residents or businesses contact us about removing the ash trees near their property and they turn out to be larger ash trees, we do have funding to be able to take those trees down as well.
So how many have you removed so far? This list about 1,267 last year, this year, but you mentioned you've been doing before that.
Yeah, I think the year we probably removed about another 600 beyond that, so we're probably at about 2,000 ash trees that have been removed to date.
So there's roughly 12,000 left.
Yeah, there is. So we had anticipated that this is probably total about a 15-year plan if we stay on this pace of about 1,000 trees a year moving forward. So we're about where we anticipated we would be at this point.
How do I know if a tree in my neighborhood is on public
That's a great question. Street trees typically are between the curb and sidewalk, so that's one of the easy ways to identify them. The other is there are some neighborhoods that don't have sidewalks, but if somebody steps off the distance between the curb and the tree, if it's within about 12 feet or so, or 12 or 15 feet of the curb line, it may very well be a public tree. And we're certainly happy to come out and check and see if it is and let them know.
And if I see a tree that it looks like maybe it's starting to show signs of decay or decline in my neighborhood, do you want people contacting the Parks Department, or who do they contact?
Yeah, absolutely. We would like them to contact us. If people see a tree that either has damage, or if it's dropped limbs, or if it's showing signs of damage or decay, we'd like for them to contact us. We'll have an inspector go out and take a look at that tree, and then we'll schedule whatever work is necessary. And again, the Parks and Recreation Department main number is 402-441-7847. And people can certainly call us between 8 and 4:30 any day, and we'll be happy to take that information down and have the trees checked.
And talk a little bit about why these trees, why this is so dangerous for the public if we don't take action.
You know, that is a great question, because we get that question. Some people will have experienced Dutch elm disease, and because of kind of the way that an elm tree, the tissue with the elm tree is formed, they stand for a period of time, and they don't become dangerous. But ash trees, because of the way they're formed, they become brittle very quickly, and within about a year's time, they begin to fall apart. And so the thing that we're very concerned about happening is having a lot of standing dead ash trees, either on public property in parks or along streets, for example, because we don't want to expose the public to the risk of ash trees that are essentially falling apart. And that has happened in other communities, that they've gotten behind the curve on keeping ahead of the trees as they died, and then they've had a public health or public safety challenge in large, potentially dangerous trees in their public areas.
Talk a little bit about the status of the plan and where it goes from here. And
Yeah.
what happens once that's adopted?
Great question. We worked with the Nebraska Forest Service and our Community Forestry Advisory Board in developing the draft emerald ash borer response and recovery plan. And if people are interested in reviewing that plan, it's available at our website, which is at parks.lincoln.ne.gov. Again, parks.lincoln.ne.gov. And if they go to the community forestry page, there's a copy of the plan there. We'll make sure that we had paper copies available at libraries and at the administration office earlier this year. We'll get paper copies back out to those locations again. So the plan was developed in cooperation, as I said, with those two groups. It's been to the Community Forestry Advisory Board for review. They've made a recommendation of adoption. We wanted to wait until after the budget process just because it's a very busy time. Turns out right after the budget process we now have EAB, so that probably makes it an even more important time. And then we will be bringing that plan to the City Council for their review and adoption. The City Council has been briefed on the plan, so they're aware of what's in the plan, but we think it's important to actually have a formally adopted action plan that we're working with.
Anything else? All right.
Thanks, everybody.